Hi, thank you for watching today on what's going on in the OLC. I keep getting a lot of questions about Mr. Cook. What's going on with all that tall grass? Kind of looks like a weed. Well, what's growing out right now is cereal rye, and it needs to make a head, and it'll make seed, and those seed will drop, and that'll be provide seed for next year, so that during the winter months there's a cover crop out there. And the things that we've planted, mostly they spread by seed. They're not your traditional yard kind of thing. So that it's going to be a little bit different. It's a kind of a shift in the way you look at things. So I'm going to show you another example. This is an example of the grasses, the soil, the grasses, the roots of the grasses and the soil. And traditional turf grasses, the roots tend to be very shallow. And shallow grass has a hard time in Texas droughts. And that's why it requires so much of your hard-earned money to pay for the city water. And with our natives, once they're established, there's little to no watering required, and they'll do just fine. Obviously, if you water them a little bit, they'll tend to be more green, but they'll survive just fine. But one advantage too is the deep roots hold it during weathering and erosion events, and mostly it just provides deep nourishment for the plant during periods of drought. I want to show you, here's an example of an area that's using native plants and a very nice looking landscape. The one thing about native plants is you create rich biodiversity, lots of different textures and sizes and shapes and colors. It's a lot more interesting and visually interesting to look at to me than just a monoculture of green grass. This is what we see in nature. And we don't see monocultures of one single anything in nature. Here's another example where someone has done all kinds of layering with different textures, colors, shapes. And when this is done right, there's color in all different seasons. And this is kind of the thing we're going for in the OLC. And it's going to take a little bit of time and lots of overseeding. And at times, these grasses will have to go to seed, make their seed, drop their seed to have a plant for the next year. So here's another example of some native plants growing next to a roadway, and you can see they kind of grow in bunches. They don't spread out like a traditional turf grass that you may have in your yard. Here's one of my favorite grasses. This is a blue stem, a native blue stem, and it looks blue, and it's a native grass, and it's a fantastic grass, one of my favorites. But it gets tall, so you kind of have to think about, kind of have to be careful where you're going to put that. One of the other reasons that we do what we do is we want to help provide habitats for many of our native plants and animals. And one of the native birds here is a blue bunting, which is this really cool, bright colored little bird that you see here in Azle, Texas. But if we continue to cut off the natives in the area, this bird will not be here anymore. And because they require the native seed, especially like drop seed, which if that's growing in your yard, you would think it was a weed and you would try to kill it. But they need the seed in order to survive. The other reason is to help sustain butterfly migration. This is the butterfly route. You can ask older people, grandparents, and your parents about times in their life that they may remember when they were younger that the butterflies would just cover the trees when they would come through. And you couldn't even tell where the tree was versus where the butterflies were. Well, the butterflies require native, to most people, they would be considered weeds, but they are antelope horns and butterfly weed, and actually they make pretty flowers. But when you see it growing other times of year, you would just think, ooh, yuck, there's a weed in my yard. But actually they are native and required for butterflies to lay their eggs in. And so we have to rethink how we do our landscaping. Do we have to do monocultures in our yard and have everybody look the same, or should we think more about how did nature do this? And my feeling is we should do more the way we see in nature, and mostly for the purpose of saving water and saving us money in our pocketbooks. Here's another example of the butterfly migration route, and you can see we're right in the middle of it. But I hope that answers some questions about why we're doing what we're doing, and we're not just on purpose trying to make things look crazy. There is a method to the madness. It's going to take a while, and eventually it will fill in, and it will look really, really nice. And so, thank you for watching.